He left on a Tuesday. Not dramatically, not with shouting or slammed doors, just quietly, almost politely, like someone checking out of a place they had already emotionally left long ago. Emma was lying in bed, her body burning with fever, the room slightly spinning in that slow, heavy way that comes when illness settles deep into your bones. The diagnosis, multiple sclerosis, had come 6 months earlier. Since then, everything in her life had begun to shift, like furniture in a dark room you keep bumping into. Daniel stood by the closet, folding his shirts with careful precision, the same way he used to pack for trips they once was detached, as if this were just another routine. "I can't do this anymore," he said. Emma didn't cry. She watched his hands, watched the suitcase close, watched the man she had spent 12 years with slowly step out of her life. "I'm still young," he added, not looking at her. "I don't want to spend my life taking care of someone sick. It's harsh, I know, but it's the truth." The truth. It hung in the air like something cold and metallic. Emma said nothing. What could she say? That she didn't choose this? That she was still the same person? That she was terrified? He left, and the door clicked shut, with a quiet finality that echoed louder than any argument ever could. The first year after Daniel left wasn't heroic. There were no inspiring montages, no sudden strength, just survival. Slow, uneven, often ugly. Survival. Her neighbor, Mrs. Carter, brought over soup in mismatched containers that smelled like home and something steady. Her younger sister, Lily, drove in every weekend, cleaning, organizing, talking about ordinary things as if normalcy could be stitched back into place through routine. And then there was Maya, 24, a social worker with tired eyes and a long braid that always slipped over her shoulder. She came 3 times a week. She helped Emma move, organize, manage the small daily battles. The most important thing? She never looked at Emma with pity. Not once. And that, more than anything, felt like dignity. Emma had always written. Back in college, late at night, in notebooks no one ever read. Thoughts, fragments, quiet observations about life. Now, as her body began to betray her in slow, unpredictable ways, writing became something else. At first, it was just notes. What does it feel like when your body stops listening to you? What does fear sound like at 3 a.m.? Then those notes became stories. Then those stories became something deeper. Truth, shaped into words. One day, without asking, Lily sent one of Emma's pieces to a small literary magazine. They published it. Then they asked for more. Emma sat with the editor's letter in her hands for a long time. And strangely, she thought of Daniel. Not with anger, that had faded somewhere in the second year, just with clarity. He had left a woman he thought was broken, and that woman had become a writer. Daniel found out by accident. A mutual friend showed him an article. There was Emma's photo, older, thinner, sitting in a wheelchair, but smiling. Not the polite smile he remembered. Something freer, lighter, alive in a way he couldn't quite understand. The caption read, "Author, award-winning writer." He stared at the image longer than he expected. In those years, Daniel had tried to build something new. There was Chloe, young, vibrant, full of energy. They lasted 8 months. She left saying he was emotionally distant, that he didn't know how to truly be present. He had been offended at the time. Then there was Sarah, divorced, warm, tired in a quiet, honest way.
They stayed together for over a year. It ended without drama, just a slow realization that they were two separate people living parallel lives. Once, Sarah's daughter asked him, "Are you going to stay?" He didn't know how to answer. That question lingered long after the relationship ended. From the outside, Daniel's life looked fine. Work, friends, occasional dinners, weekends filled with noise. But beneath it all, something hollow. A quiet emptiness that no distraction seemed to fill. At night, memories would slip in uninvited. Emma falling asleep on his shoulder in a movie theater. Her laughing when she burned the coffee. Again. Her reading aloud to him while he pretended not to listen. He tried not to think about those things. But memory doesn't ask permission. 4 years after he left, Daniel ended up in a hospital.
Nothing dramatic, heart issues, arrhythmia, something he had ignored for too long. 2 weeks in a shared room, white walls, the steady beep of machines, time stretching in uncomfortable silence. His roommate, an older man named George, had visitors every day. A wife who held his hand, children who brought laughter, grandkids who filled the room with life. There was always movement, warmth, presence. Daniel had one visitor, a coworker who brought oranges and awkward conversation. On the 5th day, George asked him, "You married? Kids?" Daniel shook his head. George was quiet for a moment, then smiled softly. "I've been with my wife for 46 years, he said. "She drives me crazy sometimes. Strong as steel, always her way." He paused, looking at his own hand. "But yesterday," he said, "she held my hand like this." He gently wrapped his fingers around his palm, as if remembering the exact pressure. "And I thought, if I make it through this, it's because she's still holding on." That night, Daniel didn't sleep. For the first time in years, he let himself remember fully. Emma, the fever, the suitcase, the door, and that look. She hadn't begged, hadn't cried, hadn't tried to stop him. She had just watched. At the time, he couldn't name what was in her eyes. Now, he could. It wasn't heartbreak. It was something deeper. It was the quiet death of an illusion that someone would stay no matter what. Daniel turned his face into the pillow and cried, silently. So no one would hear. After leaving the hospital, he found her online, read everything she had written, every story, every line. She wrote about betrayal, not just by people, but by the body itself, about learning to ask for help without feeling like you're disappearing, about loss, not always as death, but sometimes as someone quietly closing a door behind them. She wrote about being broken and still whole. And in her words, Daniel saw himself, not as the hero, but as the one who left. He opened a message window more than once, typed nothing, closed it again. What could he say? I'm sorry? Sorry for what? For her illness? Or for who he turned out to be? Some apologies don't fix anything. Some arrive too late to matter. He never sent the message. This story doesn't have a happy ending, because real stories rarely do. Emma lives her life. She writes. She publishes books. Readers write to her, "Your words saved me on my darkest night." She has Maya, no longer just a social worker, but a friend. She has Lily. She has Mrs. Carter's soup. She has a life. Slow, complicated, real. Daniel lives too. He takes his heart medication, sometimes watches children playing in the park, feeling something he can't quite name. At night, sometimes, in that fragile moment between sleep and waking,
His hand reaches out, searching for someone beside him. There's no one there. And the cruelest part? He chose that emptiness. Because life doesn't punish loudly. It doesn't shout or create dramatic scenes. It simply gives you exactly what you chose, and you live with it. Quietly. In the dark. With a hand reaching into an empty space. So if there's anything this story leaves behind, it's this. Take care of the people in your life, not only when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Because love isn't in grand gestures, not in flowers or words or fleeting emotions. It's in one simple, difficult thing. Staying. Just staying.